Hi there, and welcome to the Future Makers podcast by MEND. This is where we talk to people from scientific and high-tech organizations with a purpose. I'm Angina Herman, and Aveli Idavain is hiding under the hood to make sure everything runs. Say hi to everyone, Ave.
Hello. Sorry, I muted myself, but hello, everyone.
Excellent, nice to have you here, Ave. Today we get to speak with Nicolas Weber, co-founder and CEO of Voltiris, a company that develops solar panels for greenhouses. Welcome, Nicolas.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So tell us, Nicolas, why does Voltiris exist?
Thanks, Angina. I think that's an interesting question, actually. I think Voltiris exists first to answer some questions, and that is about providing a solution to greenhouse operators. So in their decarbonization efforts and also in their efforts to become more energy independent. But then on a more personal side, I mean, Voltiris exists also from a desire to personally do an impact and to have an entrepreneurial journey. So I think that's why we exist.
So tell us a bit more about this. So solar panels, there's a ton of companies out there creating solar panels. So what makes Voltiris panels so special?
Yes, so basically our solution is a solar panel solution that works with agricultural surfaces, meaning that crops need a lot of light to grow. But the key idea or the key principle behind Voltiris is that they don't need the entire light spectrum to grow. And so what we do is that we apply something that we call a spectral filtering technology that filters the light coming from the sun. The part of the light that is necessary for the photosynthesis and for the growth of the crops goes through our solution so that the crops can grow and perform their regular photosynthesis. The part of the light that is not used by the crops, we take it out and we transform it into renewable energy. And so that's what makes us different. So it's that part about having a full utilization of light to ensure that we can keep the primary use of the surface that we're using, that is in this case the growth of crops, and also use the wasted part of the light to produce energy. And so that's I think our differentiation, and that's what makes us different. So it's not a standard solar panel solution. It's not a solution that is meant to be used when I would say, for example, on top of buildings or whatever, because there you don't necessarily need the land below it. You can shade without any problem. And here the idea is really to leverage surfaces that are already used at scale, that is agricultural surfaces, to also produce energy.
Okay, so that's also then the answer to my question, like why greenhouses in particular. But it sounds like a very clever thing to do, to sort of have your light and eat it too, or however you would phrase it. So do you have other potential applications in mind as well, or is greenhouses clearly the best one?
Yes, so the credit of the idea goes to my co-founders. So they're the brains behind what we do. And so my co-founder Jonas, for example, he has a PhD in spectroscopy, which is also in optics. So he's the expert about light spectrum, and so he's the one that had the first idea about this. And I think if we think about what we do, so it's that principle. It's the applications of that principle about splitting light to fully utilize or fully use the spectrum. When we got started, that was about 3 years ago. We started with discussions with different growers, different fields, and we understood actually that greenhouses would be the ones that benefited the most from the application of that principle. That is because greenhouses need a lot of energy today to operate. They're under a lot of pressure because that energy is becoming increasingly more expensive. They have a lot of swings in regards of the volatility of the energy prices because they're subject to the grid, and so they're exposed to events that might happen thousands of kilometers away from their greenhouse, which might impact their production. And they also need to reduce their carbon emissions significantly. And that is something that governments, retailers, and consumers are asking for. And the problem that those greenhouse operators are facing is that they're extremely sensitive to light. In the greenhouse, more than in anywhere else in agriculture, every percentage of light matters, and the existing solutions really do not fit with the needs of the growers. And so that's why we decided to start working with greenhouses. The only interesting things related to that as a corollary is that traditionally in the field of what we call agrivoltaics, which is the field in which we're active, so it's the combination of agriculture and photovoltaic, the energy produced in combination with the crops is not used by the growers or the producers of crops. It's usually injected into the grid. In the case of greenhouses, that energy is required by the greenhouse itself, so you have a lot of self-consumption. And so you also increase the independence, you also reduce significantly the CO2 emissions, etc. And so that's also where it's interesting. Nevertheless, coming back to your question, the principle that we have can be applied in a lot of different fields. It's what I call manifestations, or it's product designs of how you put the basic idea into practice, right? And you can do it in outdoor settings, so the solution would look totally different. Some people reached out to us in the field of how do you call it, fish farming or aquaculture. I get confused with the French way of saying it, but basically where you have fish farms, yes. Because here the idea would be that the fishes get stressed, or fish get stressed because they don't have the same light as they would have in the natural habitat, and so you can try to recreate that, and so reduce their stress, their diseases, etc. And again, by filtering the light, you can reproduce the light that they would usually get, and then also produce energy. It's something that some people reached out. We haven't explored it too much. I don't know to which extent that would really work, but that's something that some people reached out to us. You could imagine the principles that we use in the building sector. That's probably something that will be explored at some point in a few years. But again, I think the opportunity is really to bring a unique solution for people that need it, and that is highly impactful, and that's what gets us motivated, and that's why we're happy to work with glass greenhouses for today.
What does your product actually look like? Because it cannot look like a real solar panel from everything you're describing.
No. It's usually people get quite surprised when they see our solution for multiple reasons. So one is that because we filter the light, actually it's colorful. So it's so what we do in a nutshell is that we filter the green light from the red and the blue, and so the red and the blue go through our solution. So if you're below it, it will look pink, and then the green is concentrated on the solar cell, and so it looks like, so the way it looks is, and that's why it's very different from regular solar cells, is that it's a reflector. And that's the solution we have for glass greenhouses. When it's outdoor, it looks more like a traditional solar panel with the filtering. But if we focus just on the indoor solutions for greenhouses, it looks like a reflector. So on one side, you have a set of mirrors that are pink, and on the other side, you have a small solar cell. So yeah, it's a bit different, and so also when it's installed inside the greenhouse, it becomes really colorful. I think we've had some jokes and discussions that we should maybe do something in conjunction with Art Basel or something like this, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
I was wondering, because you mentioned that this is not a solution for, like, you know, on top of buildings, because it's probably more expensive than a regular panel, I would presume, and just too much technology for that purpose. But then I imagine if you really want to go all in with the solar panels, you'd have regular ones on the ceiling, and then you'd have your panels as windows there. But that would make your indoors look pink then. But maybe that could be an interesting style or design choice anyway.
Yes. So I mean, on your point around the cost, so ultimately we still sell energy, which is a commodity, right? And so you cannot. I'm a big believer that. You can have a solution that looks perfect in a lab, but if you're 2-3 times more expensive than the market price, it will never work, right? And I think we have to be pragmatic on that side. So you're not, or we're not allowed to have something that is out of scope in regards of the price, and we still have an anchor that is the cost of the energy, and so that's where we have to be competitive. But even if you're selling it at 10% premium over regular energy price, if there is no use in terms of the secondary application, that is the land that is below or something like this, yes, indeed, it's better just to put regular solar panels.
So I'm curious. So I'm neither of us are scientists or engineers,
Yeah, me
Ave and
neither.
I. But this, oh, excellent. We'll have a good conversation about engineering here then. No, I'm just this spectral filtering sounded like such a great and also a simple idea. So is this? I mean, I'm sure that must have been around. It's been used in some other applications. So, like, how much of this is proprietary to Voltiris, and like, what? Where did you get the ideas from?
Yeah, so actually so the idea of spectral filtering is something that that has been around for decades. And I mean, for example, my glasses, I have a blue light filter. It's the same principle. I think the technology that we're using has been around in the field of construction and automotives also for decades. Very often, so for example, if you're in big halls, let's say in an airport, and you have those big glasses, for example, the reason why we're not cooking inside the building is the fact that they already have a filter that takes away, for example, the infrared. And my co-founder, so he had seen these type of things during his PhD, and also the materials that we're using. And actually our patent are not on the spectral filtering itself, it's more about how we put that spectral filtering in practice to produce energy. And that's what we have patented. And so that's the proprietary part. What I really liked the first time we started discussing about this is that conceptually what we do is very simple, and I think it's something that is easy to grasp. That we say, look, it's to oversimplify it. It's a very an oversimplification, but the crops are green, and the reason for that is that they don't absorb the green. It's a bit more complex than that, but let's say, if we want to keep it simple, the crops are green, so they don't absorb the green. And so that's what triggered him. He was like, oh, okay, but so they don't need the green, and so that means that maybe we can do something with the green, right? And I think it's very, again, conceptually, it's easy to understand to say there is part of the light that is needed for photosynthesis that is used by the crops, and everything they don't use, we make energy out of it. In practice, it's a lot more complex.
I imagine, yeah. So are there no other companies doing similar things with solar panels that you know of, or what's the competitive situation?
Yeah, so I think we're active in a field that that is emerging. That is the field of agrivoltaics. 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, there was nothing there, and today you have more and more companies that are looking into the field. The main reason for me that is that we'll need to deploy renewable energy at scale over the next few years. Today you still have some prime location spots where you can deploy renewable, but in a few years, and even now in some cases, those will be missing. And we see that in Switzerland, for example, that there has been huge debates around alpine solar. And for me, that highlights the fact that we're looking for places where we can put solar at scale. And those, for example, solutions like alpine solar have their limitations that are, for example, the impact on biodiversity, etc. And that's why there has been a huge debate. And the field in which we are is emerging because we see that actually agriculture is a big reason why our land is used today. And maybe there would be ways where we could combine energy production and those lands that are already used. And the growers also get benefit from that. And so that's why it's a win-win-win situation, right? And so my point is that you have multiple companies that are emerging in that field. Nevertheless, there are varieties of things to do. And most of the companies today are looking at outdoor crops. That is putting solar panels on regular fields. You have some limitations to that. That is that you still have an impact on the landscape so that it looks different. And so you have a lot today, the regulatory framework is not adapted yet for the full, I would say, deployment of solutions like this. And usually you need to get building permits that are very cumbersome to get. And so that's why also greenhouses are interesting. In our case, because we're inside the building, and so that's also something that makes our solution different. We don't need any building permits. And so we can also work very fast with the growers, with the utility companies, etc. When we look at specifically greenhouses, there are a few people that are looking into this, but I think, and I'm very biased here, I think we're the only ones that cracked the equation between effective light transmission, and so growing the crops without an impact, and getting unit economics, or I'd say energy economics that also makes sense. And I think that's where our filters are better. That's where I think our approach is also more tailored to that, and also that's where our patents are very helpful. And so usually when I think about competitors, when it looks specific to greenhouses, I really like to think also about alternatives, and the alternatives are the energy grid, it's the cogeneration that some greenhouses already have, it's the regular solar panels that you can put in the field next to it, etc. And those would be rather, I think, what we consider as the competitors today. Even if you have some companies that are looking at the same problem, but I think they have quite different approaches.
Mm. So what is your business case? I mean, it's more complicated. You don't just sell panels to greenhouses. This whole energy, what exactly is this whole package that you're working on offering?
Yes, so usually we offer two solutions to the growers. If they want to buy the solution, they can. And that is a regular solar panel solution. And in that case, we would also provide the maintenance for the solution, for example. And then now we're also assessing if we can have kind of a license for the piloting of the solar modules, because they move. That's something I didn't mention before, but actually we can move them, so we can also fine tune the light that comes in, etc. Nevertheless, we're also aware that when we talk about solar solutions, usually it's quite capex intensive. It's long payback times. And for the people or the growers that don't want to buy directly the solution, we can also offer them an energy contract. And here the idea is to say that because they already require so much energy, they have a huge energy bill, and we can give them an energy contract that secures their energy supplies, that reduces their carbon emissions, and also that is cheaper than the current energy that they're buying. The only thing is they need to subscribe to a long-term energy contract. When I'm saying long-term, I'm thinking 15, 20 years energy contract. And so that's also the alternative. Does that answer your question?
So what are they then paying for in this energy contract? Is it like it's essentially a lease on the device, or?
So that they would be paying as an off-taker for the energy produced. So then they subscribe to a certain volume of energy for a certain price. Then it's really a cost per kilowatt hour, if you would.
All right, interesting.
And then the situation, so I can get into specifics in regards of, is it going to be 12 cents, 13 cents, 14 cents? Because it depends on a lot of factors. It's going to depend on first how much energy you produce, which is dependent on the sun, where you're located. Then it's going to depend on how much they're going to self-consume versus how much we sell to the grid, the size of the project, etc., etc. And those are things that we usually. So the first thing we do when we work with the greenhouse is that we start by what we call developing the project. And so that is by looking at their energy needs, tailoring the size of the project, etc., creating the financials, and this is very specific.
So where are you now as a company? Like, how much of this is something you've already done, and how much of it is a business plan for the future?
Yeah, so we started, I would say, seriously about 1.5 years ago. We did a financing round last year to build the team and to start the first project. This year we've done a set of different projects. So I think usually the projects we're doing are on 3 dimensions. We need to test, I would say, three main things. The agronomical impact, that I think is also the most groundbreaking thing we're bringing to the table in regards of our approach, and that is something that is interesting because we talked to various leading photobiology experts, and we didn't get the same answer from everybody on what is needed to grow tomatoes, for example. A lot of people said, look, in theory that it works like this, but I think we needed to put it into test. And so that's why we've been doing, all our projects I've been doing this year have an agronomical component where we're testing on different type of crops, different geographies, how does it work, are there any benefits, etc. Then we also need to test on the energy side, and that means how much energy we produce. And that's something we've tested in a few settings. In theory, it's quite straightforward because whether you have you have some losses from the system sometimes, or you have some elements that come into play. But if you want to oversimplify, you can put a few units in a few greenhouses in different setups, and you can also test how much energy you're going to produce. The third component that we need to validate is more on the industrialization and mechanization side. I mean, making sure that you can do it at scale, that it's reliable, and that is something that is more in terms of focus and resources that requires more, and that we test only on a few different projects. And so over the year, we've conducted 12 projects with different allocations between those three dimensions. Now, across all the dimensions, we've demonstrated that it works, or our solution works on still what I would call a rather small scale. That is, we didn't have any impact on the growth of the crops, even in some cases benefits for the crops. We've been able to produce the amount of energy that we're expecting in line with our theoretical models. And also it has been reliable and worked well also on the mechanization part. Now we need to demonstrate that we can do it at scale, and that is mostly on the industrialization mechanization part. And what I mean by at scale means projects that have already on the energy side production of more than 300 or installed capacity above 300 kilowatt peak, which is already quite sizable in the industry. And here the challenge is not on producing the solar modules, which is to some extent quite straightforward, but it's really about installing, maintaining, monitoring the asset and demonstrating that you can do that. And so we're at this stage, which is, so now we're getting the first revenues for those smaller projects, but our roadmap goes towards a demonstration at scale to really get the full market access and really start scaling with the growers with this. Does that make sense?
It does, yes, yes.
Okay.
Have you had customers knocking on your door, like, or what's the initial reception been in the field of greenhouses so far?
Yeah, so that's I think we've been very positively surprised by this. I think we've seen a lot of excitement for our solution from the growers themselves. Again, they really look for solutions today on their energy side, and I think they've been. We've seen a lot of interest and curiosity for our approach that is quite different from what other people have pitched to them. I think one of the first feedback we had received was something in the lines of, it has been a long time I didn't hear an idiot idea, something like this. So that's great. And also I think there are some people have preconceptions regarding growers in regards of the fact that it might be conservative, which have been proven wrong. I think it's they've been very innovative, willing to test, willing to review how growing works. We've also been surprised to some extent by the depth of knowledge that the growers have over their crops, how energy works, etc. And so you very quickly we've been able also to learn a lot because there were a lot of questions that have been asked by those growers that have been interested. But overall, I would say it's interesting. It's really a casebook adoption curve scenario, which is some growers that we talk to say, look, I don't see your solution working, and we say that's fine. We'll come back in a few years, and there's no problem. And I think there it's even better not to try to convince people that don't see the idea, and it's too soon probably for those growers. Some other growers might say, very interesting, I like what you do, but I need to see a bit more. And those who say, that's great, we'll keep you updated, and we try to keep them in the loop. And then there are some that say, that's awesome. I see the vision, I love what you do. I've had some discussions with some friends in the past about the same type of principle. We've got some people that told us things like this, or really the people say, oh, I see what you're building, I think it will work, but let me help you get there, etc. And those are the ones that we want to iterate with today, because I don't think we have the pretension to say that we know everything, and it's a very complex topic because you're at the intersection between the three dimensions that I was mentioning before, plus also the entire economical feasibility that's even on the side. And so you need to think about a lot of things. And I think for us, that's the exciting part, because we're learning a lot. But it gets very complex when you go into the details, and really having the balance and the right, finding the balance in that equation that is in between agronomy, energy, economical feasibility, etc., is complex. And so we need to have growers that are onboarded. We need a lot of partners that are onboarded and with which we have recurrent feedbacks. And the great part is that we've found a lot of partners like this, and there are some in the Geneva region, for example, from Serre des Marais, so Alexandre Cudet and Patrice Bresta. From the beginning, they've been our supporters. They've been helping us from the beginning, really interested in what we've been doing, and that has been amazing. To give you an idea on this, the first solution we pitched to them looked totally different from the one we have today. It was the same principles, but we wanted to replace the roof of the greenhouse with parabolic mirrors. And today a lot of people tell us, oh, but why don't you just replace the roof of the greenhouse? And we say, look, that's the first idea actually we had, and we went to pitch it to Alexandre and Patrice, and they told us, guys, it looks great on paper, it will never work in reality, for a lot of different reasons. I think they gave us 8 reasons, like things like retrofitting will not work because the structure is going to be impacted, so you're going to add weight. It's going to be a mess to do it while operations are running. You're going to take out too much irradiance out of the greenhouse. So as a consequence, you will need to heat more the greenhouse because you're taking out the heat from the greenhouse. And a lot of things like this, right? And so we early on we started working with them, and we were able to also work on a design that suited their needs, and that then we've also discussed with other growers. But my point here is that, again, here I'm not interested in building something stuck in a lab in the Polytechnical School and working on it for 3-4 years, and then we show it to growers and say, very nice theoretically, but no. And it was very important for us also to work with partners, not only with growers, but also with greenhouse manufacturers, with other providers of solutions for greenhouses, because it's quite a complex ecosystem.
I can imagine, yeah. I'm going to return to that economic side later on, but I have a detailed question. Maybe this is a very tiny one, but it's sort of got stuck in my ear when you mentioned on the first aspect you were researching, the agronomy and all, that the spectral filtering did not damage the crops. It actually improved, or it helped them in some cases. Like, what is the situation? Where does this filtering actually help the growth of the crops?
Yeah, so I'm quite careful about claiming this, because this is something that needs to be fully validated over a few cycles. But here the hypothesis is to say that, I would say the really rough hypothesis is to say that some part of the light attacks the crops, like it does for you and me, for example, during the summer if we go under the sun. And by taking that part of the light away, that we can enable the crop to grow better. And here actually, so what we've been seeing, and that a lot of growers have been quite excited about, is that we take away some heat from the crops, so we get the benefits of the shade without shading, while keeping the light, right? And what we've been able to measure during our projects is that actually the crops have a lower temperature. So you keep the heat inside the greenhouse, but the crops themselves have a lower temperature, which is better for them, right? And that's something that we're fully assessing now in regards of how that translates into benefits for the growers. Another thing that is quite interesting, and actually that's something I didn't know, when I'm saying we're learning and we're finding out as we do, is that some pests are attracted by some part of the light. And actually, and here I'm going to be careful also, because it's going to be, it's also a bit more complex than that, but some type of flies, for example, called the thrips, that are very active, for example, with cucumber crops, are attracted by some part of the light. And by taking that part of the light away, you reduce their incidence on the crops, and therefore you reduce the need for pesticides, you reduce also the amount of losses that you have on crops, etc. And that's something we've been testing on cucumbers. And for example, when we tested the control versus our solution, we saw that we had a reduction by a factor of 3 of that type of pest. And this is something that I didn't know about, that my co-founders or even our team didn't know about, but some research centers or some growers came to us and said, hey, have you tested this? It's actually quite interesting. And so we have a full map of benefits that we're testing that goes in that direction. That is, we've had good initial data points that lead us to believe that there is something to poke there and something to investigate. But this is something that I also want to be careful about claiming it, because it's going to be dependent on some crops, on some growers, on some specificities. And it's something that you need also a few cycles to fully demonstrate it. We're talking about something that is very related to life science, and so it's not some variations in data from 1 year to another can be explained by a lot of different things than just our solution. And that's also why you need a strong methodology, and you need also a good track record, which to some extent for us, it's also what builds I think our defensive one. Now we have also a lot of data, agronomical data that is available about how our solution works on different filters in different geographies. And I think that's also very powerful.
Yeah, that sounds like there are ideas for tons of doctoral theses during your work. Is this research something you do on your own in-house, or do you collaborate with I don't know, universities, or who actually does this research work?
So it depends on which work packages. But for example, everything related to solar cells, we work with the CSEM in Neuchâtel, so which is one of the leading research centers in everything related to solar cells. We also interact with the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, that is on the solar cell side. On the technical side, so really about the filters, so we have now a partnership with 3M, so the leading technology company from the US. When it comes to the agronomical aspect, we work with research centers. So for example, with the Agroscope in Switzerland, there are 2 research centers in the Netherlands, so the Wageningen University, and also Delphi, which is a research center. We're going to start a project now. We also work with UC Davis in the US. So there are a lot of different ways that you can bring that expertise. And then there are also big part that we have in-house, so with people that work a lot also on the mechanical side, on the engineering side, also on the optics side. So as I said, so there is one part that is about what part of light goes through, but there is also a part about how you transform that light into energy, and that's also something that today we keep a lot in-house, because that's also where our expertise is very strong, and for me that's also where we have a strong edge versus other type of applications.
So how large is your team? How many are you now in the company?
So today we are, I think, about 11, 12 FTs. I'm saying because it's we have a bit more employees when you translate it to FTs. I think it's 11 or 12. And then when you count for the interns, advisors, etc., it goes to 18. So 18, I mean, still small in regards of the size, but when I think about the fact that 1 year ago we were three co-founders, I think that's quite exciting. Also, a bit stressful at times, but exciting.
So yeah, that is indeed a lot of activity for you guys during this past year.
Yeah, I think things have been moving fast and the good direction. I think the challenge here is not to get too euphoric in the sense of hiring. We need to make sure that we can keep the traction. But I think that's something I'm very. I don't like the word because I don't like to give myself flowers, but I'm very proud of the team we've been building and really the competencies or the expertise of the people that have joined the team. I think that's also something that tells a bit towards our vision and what we're working towards, that people have been willing to take sacrifices on their salaries or others to join us because they really believe in what we're building, and I think that's great. But so I'm very happy about this, and I think we need a strong team because again it's quite complex. There are a lot of things that you need to think about, and so you need people that that bring a strong expertise in other fields, that can bring a lot of ideas, that bring new ways of thinking, etc. So you need a combination of all of this.
So you yourself also have, the three of us, none of us are engineers. You're one of the co-founders, but you studied strategy, business management, and you worked at Boston Consulting for a while. So how did a consultant from a large company end up founding a startup in the field of, I don't know, voltaics and agriculture?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think, so my background actually is in economics. So I have my degree is in strategy, but it's a fancy word to say applied microeconomics.
Okay.
And then so I worked for a few years for the Boston Consulting Group. So I spent about 6 years there. But I've always tried to do things that were quite entrepreneurial. So before I started working for BCG, I tried with two friends also to start a venture. I think it was more a side project rather than a venture. It never really got too serious, but I think that's something that I always wanted to do. While at BCG, I also took, for example, I took some time off. So I did a sabbatical during which I went to Colombia to work with entrepreneurs that needed to scale. That has been an amazing experience. And while at BCG, I've also worked 1 year with the venture studio of BCG that used to be called BCG Digital Ventures. Now it's called BCG X, and that was about creating a company with a corporate partner. And so in that case, I was part of the founding team really from the beginning of the journey up to the beta testing. So I spent 1 year there. On a company in the chemical sector. I think now they have around 60 employees, so it has been working out quite well. And that has been also very interesting, because then I was really about what are the ideas, how do we test that, what's the business model, what's the business plan, how are we going to do it in regards of the operations, etc. And that was also great learning. And I think after all of this, for me it was clear that I did not want to remain a consultant my entire life. That I wanted to do something that was more in the entrepreneurial part. And at the same time, I think there was a realization about the fact that in regards of climate, I'm also a deep believer that this is probably the biggest challenge that humanity will be facing or is facing over the next few years. Arguably, there are a few others also big challenges that we'll be facing. But for me, I think now it's up to us to also make a contribution and to really be able to say, look, I tried my best to try to change that situation. So for me, my point here is that the entrepreneurial aspect was important in regards of the next steps of my career, but it also needed to be grounded in doing something that also had a purpose. I didn't want to be an entrepreneur that just for the sake of building a company. But I also wanted to do something that was meaningful and that has a purpose. And I think for me it was also kind of I think this is key also in regards of having the motivation and the passion in what you're doing. Because the entrepreneurial journey is not something that is going to be easy. It's really, I think, a journey of up and downs. And I think people tell you about this, that it's a roller coaster of emotions. I don't think that you're really prepared for that, because the highs are very high and the lows are very low. And so that's also something that's interesting. And I think having that purpose is something that is key towards making it also worthwhile, at least on our side. And so coming back to your question, so for me it was quite a natural move. And I'm surprised about how many ex-colleagues or people that are in the consulting industry today reach out because they also want to do something that's entrepreneurial. I think you will be surprised but also the number of people that want to have an impact on in regards of climate or want to do something more meaningful but just don't know where to start. And my advice to them would be, look, I think the most difficult part is just doing taking the jump. Then things will happen, yeah. I don't know if that answers the other question. I might have gotten lost a bit in my answer.
No, think of this, yes, it's very important to have a purpose and figure a way to do it, but I think it's also about having someone who shares your purpose. Because I mean, it's a different and smaller scale example with our agency Mand here. But I mean, I've been thinking and dreaming about going independent for a while, but it was only when I realized that, hey, Ave has actually complementary skills and a similar kind of purpose behind that. When we get together, we can actually do this. So was it the same for you, that you found the people who had the same vision, wanted to do same things, or how did
Yeah,
this?
so look, I think the first supporter is first my family and my wife that, that said, look, I support you in doing this and in taking that risk. And then, of course, for me, also one big part is also one of the elements that were key in creating Voltiris is so my co-founders. Jonas, for example, that has a PhD in spectroscopy. So we've been friends for more than 20 years now, or about 20 years now. So it was also, I would say, for me, building a company was also in regards of creating something with a friend and trying to shape an organization with our own values. That was also something that was important. Knowing that I have a partner with which I'm starting the journey, and also Dominique, our third co-founder, with which we clicked directly to say, look, we are aligned on the values, or aligned on what we're trying to build. It's not going to be easy, but I'm okay to take that jump with you. And you know, your co-founder is extremely important because you're going to spend so much time with them. It's almost like a marriage. You know, people say that with investors. It's also the same with co-founders. And I know now, so I've met a lot of early stage companies that are very promising, and a few of them have failed because the co-founders didn't get along. And for me, I've also had the huge chance to have co-founders where we're aligned, where we think the same about some topics, where we have a strong expertise in our fields, where we're very complementary, and where we don't have frictions about futile things like money, shares, salary, ego, and these kind of things, where it's really people that are passionate about building something and bringing a groundbreaking solution, and that's something that is amazing.
Could you describe Voltiris company culture in a few words?
I think you know, it's the risk here is that as a CEO, I'm going to describe my projection, and I think that's something usually it's better to ask the employees. But I like to believe, and again, I'm happy to be challenged on this, and unfortunately they won't have the chance to challenge it. But I like to believe that it's. I think our culture is a lot about intellectual honesty, and for me that's probably the most important value. Are we doing the right things? Are we doing it the right way? And be okay with challenging the others if that doesn't work. I think it's a lot also about integrity. So in that same vein of the intellectual honesty, for me, it's about doing the right thing, even if other people are not looking, right? So also in that sense of purpose. I think we have a very open relationship. It's also about resilience. It's about creativity. So again, we face a lot of challenges in our day to day, and I think you need to keep a very resilient approach. So not being stopped by some of the challenges we're facing, and coming up with creative solutions about how we can approach those. We try to also have, inclusion and different ways of thinking inside the team, and that's why I think we have a mix of engineers, of non-engineers, of people that do other things, and I think we also need to cater that and make sure that different points of views can be expressed. What else? But I think we've defined them quite well, and I think that's something that is also usually shared within the team. I don't know if that answers all your question, or again.
Certainly, you don't have to worry.
We're still in the morning on Friday, so.
All right. In view of the time, we need to let you go continue with your busy life. So I only have our final question left here, our part of the Future Makers format. So Nicola, 10 years from now, what will the world look like?
That's a scary question. What will the world look like? Again, I think we need to make a difference between my projection and but hopefully no. I'm quite hopeful. I think we'll have more solutions also in regards of climate change that will have emerged, and that hopefully work towards a better good. I hope that a lot more can be done on the social side, but I don't think we have the time to talk about it today. But hopefully we'll have made a lot of progress there. I think there are a lot of developments also in regards of new technologies that I hope within 10 years we'll have cracked about how to make them socially good and not just profiting or benefiting a small part of the of society. And so here I'm talking about AI and solutions like this, which are going to change a lot. And so that's why I think it's difficult for me to give you a plain answer, because I think it's going to depend on the factors related to those dimensions. So how things will work socially, how things will work in regards of climate change, which are going to be linked. I really think that if you don't have more that is done on the climate change part, I think you'll have more tensions on the social part, and also on how all the new technologies and new technological advancement will be shared with people. Will also provide inputs on that. So it might be a frustrating answer that I'm giving you. And I'm quite an optimistic, I'm an optimistic person. So I'm hopeful that within 10 years we'll have found good solutions on those dimensions. But I cannot give you an answer that will be, or everything will be great and everybody will be happy, unfortunately. But I hope that
sounds like we're going to have to do.
Yeah, just on this. So I hope you'll have a lot of people that will take the plunge and that will get to work on problems that are facing, so that within 10 years we'll also have a lot more solutions. Because I really think when you're in the corporate situation, it sounds scary to leave your job and to do something. But I think the risks are really sometimes in the head of people, and they don't materialize as much as you think they do. And I really think that we need a lot of people to work on the challenges we're facing, and so that's why I really encourage people to do it. And it's a really rewarding journey, just on the personal side, just in terms of personal development. It's amazing. Really being in young companies, building. It's a people experience. It's when you have a product that you build, and in our case, for example, I don't see anything as rewarding as having one of our solar modules in the greenhouse. When you're there and you see it, you're like, wow, this is amazing. And so that's something that brings a lot, I think.
Yeah, to me this sounds like we're going to have 2 follow-up episodes here. First, one where Voltiris employees get to challenge their CEO's view of the company culture, and second, where we discuss the social side of all of this.
Yeah, but I think that would be great. And I mean, on the social side, I'm not an expert. I have a lot of friends that are ex-colleagues, for example, that are deeply into this. So I'm also very happy to recommend people to come here and to talk specifically about this. And really, you're going to have very insightful discussions, and 1 hour is not going to be enough. And on the people side, I think my employees have a lot of things to say, and very more interesting things to say, because it will go more in depth, and they're very good at this. So I would be very also happy for them to come in, and it can be also a very different view, and I think that's where it becomes interesting. I in general, I don't like conformity, and I also like to say that in life I like people that are characters, people that are a bit out of the ordinary, and so I like when there are differences in points of view, differences in opinions. That's not something that I think a lot of people people are scared about this, or some people are scared about this, but I think that's a mistake.
All right. Now I'm going to have to close this so you can run into your next meeting.
Thank you
so much. And we'll definitely get back on those follow-up podcast episodes.
Very good.
But until then, this was Nicolas Weber from Voltiris. Thank you, Nicolas. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a great day and talk to you soon.
If you like hearing stories from people who make the world a better place through science and technology, you're in luck because there's more. So make sure to subscribe to the Future Makers podcast, for example, on Spotify. Until next time.